I never imagined that taking in my nephew Eli would change my life in such a profound way. After my sister passed, I didn't think twice. He was only 17, and I knew he needed family, love, and stability. Our home became warmer with him in it. He was polite, respectful, and brought a lightness I hadn't felt in years. Eli made the house feel alive again, filled with music, chatter, and occasional teenage mischief. But it wasn't just Eli. It was his best friend Marcus who slowly started catching my attention. Marcus was around often. He helped Eli with school, played games, even offered to carry groceries in without being asked. At first, I saw him as just another polite kid. But over time, there was something about him that made me pause. He was more mature than his age suggested, composed, and always observant. One evening, after a rough day at work, I came home tired and barely managed to put dinner together. Marcus happened to be over. He quietly entered the kitchen, noticed I looked worn out, and offered to help. I let him, thinking nothing of it. Later, while Eli went to take a call, Marcus returned with a hot cup of tea and said, "You always do everything for others. Let someone take care of you for once." His words, soft and deliberate, stayed with me long after he left. It confused me. I hadn't been with anyone in years. I buried those thoughts, chalking them up to the kind of compliments teenagers give to sound grown-up. But then it kept happening. Marcus always seemed to know when I was feeling low. He noticed little things when I changed my hairstyle, when I wore something new. He complimented without hesitation, always looking straight into my eyes, as if searching for something deeper. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe I was imagining it, projecting emotions onto someone who was simply being nice. But as the weeks passed, I found myself waiting for those compliments, listening for the sound of his voice in the hallway. I hated myself for it. He was my nephew's friend, too young, too close, too wrong. And yet, it was becoming harder to ignore. There was a moment, brief but unforgettable, when we sat together on the living room couch. Eli had dozed off after a long day. Marcus leaned in to grab the remote, and his hand brushed against mine. We both froze. Our eyes met, and neither of us pulled away for a few seconds longer than appropriate. I felt my heartbeat quicken. It was subtle, but it was real. He didn't say a word. Neither did I. That night, I lay awake questioning everything. Was I reading too much into things? Was it loneliness making me feel things that weren't there? Still, I couldn't deny the way my body reacted, the way my heart fluttered, the way I started noticing the way he smiled, the way he spoke. And deep down, I feared something was starting that shouldn't. I tried to push the thoughts aside, convincing myself it was just a phase, just misplaced emotions stirred by loneliness. But Marcus didn't make it easy. He became more present, more intentional. He'd linger in conversation longer than necessary, his compliments becoming personal, not in a teenage way, but in a manner that felt deliberate, calculated. One afternoon, he noticed I was wearing a bracelet I hadn't worn in years. "That suits you," he said, holding my wrist for a second too long. I pulled back gently, offered a polite smile, but my mind was spinning. It wasn't the words, it was the tone, the way he looked at me, not like a boy looking at his friend's aunt, but like a man studying a woman. I began avoiding him, keeping conversations short, staying in my room when he was around. But it didn't help. The tension only grew. I'd hear Eli and Marcus laughing from the other room, and my chest would tighten, not out of fear, but confusion. What was wrong with me? Why did a 17-year-old boy's voice make me feel this way? I hated myself for even questioning it. Then something happened that I couldn't ignore. During dinner, Marcus made a casual remark about how men my age often don't realize how attractive they still are. His eyes didn't leave mine. Eli laughed, thinking it was a general comment, but I knew that line was aimed at me. I felt heat rush to my face. My appetite vanished. Later that night, I found a folded note on my bed. No name, just a line written in sharp, angry letters. "I see the way you look at him." My stomach dropped. I scanned the hallway. Eli's door was closed. Marcus was gone. Who left it? Was it Eli? Did he see something? I couldn't sleep. I kept going over everything in my head. Every look, every word, every silence filled with something unspoken. I hated the space I'd let open between us, the gap where emotions twisted into something neither innocent nor fully real. I needed to regain control, but I didn't know how. The next day, Marcus showed up again. He smiled like nothing had changed, but I couldn't meet his eyes. When I handed him a glass of water, his fingers brushed mine again. This time, I pulled away sharply. He paused. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked, his voice low, too calm. I couldn't respond. That night, as I cleaned up the kitchen, I saw Eli watching me. His expression was unreadable, part suspicion, part hurt. He didn't say anything, just turned and walked away. I stood there, frozen, unsure if I had crossed a line or if someone else believed I had. I knew something was building, something I couldn't name yet. But whatever it was unraveling fast. I had no idea how much damage had already been done, or who it would end up hurting most. Eli didn't speak to me the next morning. He avoided eye contact, grabbed his backpack, and left for school without a word. I told myself it was just typical teenage moodiness, but deep down I knew it wasn't. Something had shifted. Later that evening, he came home and slammed the door behind him. His eyes were red, voice shaking as he said, "I know everything." I stood frozen, unsure what he meant. He threw a small notebook on the table, Marcus's journal. I opened it, not knowing what to expect. What I found shattered every illusion I'd built. Inside were detailed entries, Marcus writing about how he planned to seduce me. A dare, a bet, a challenge he took on for the thrill. He described how easy it was to gain my trust, how he used soft touches, compliments, and timing to pull me in. It was all there in his handwriting. Cold, mocking, calculated. I felt sick. Every kind word, every shared look, every small moment I thought was genuine, it was all fake. A performance. I couldn't believe I'd let myself fall for it, even emotionally. Eli's voice cut through my silence. He said he could get into your head, make you feel something. Said he wanted to prove a point. My heart broke, not just for myself, but for Eli. He had to watch his best friend manipulate his own aunt for amusement. I tried to explain. I told him I never acted on anything, that I'd never touched Marcus inappropriately, never said anything out of line. But Eli was devastated. "You didn't have to," he said. "You let him get close. You liked it." I couldn't deny it. I had liked the attention. I had been lonely, and Marcus saw that. He exploited it. I sat down, unable to hold myself together. The betrayal burned deeper than I expected. I wasn't just humiliated. I felt stupid, vulnerable, and used. I remembered every time Marcus looked at me like I mattered, every small act of kindness that now reeked of manipulation. How had I missed it? My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. "I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go that far. I didn't expect to actually care." I deleted it without replying. His apology meant nothing. It wasn't remorse, it was damage control. He got what he wanted. My attention, my confusion, my trust. And in return, I got shame. Eli left the room, slamming the door behind him. I sat alone, surrounded by silence that felt louder than any argument. Everything in my home suddenly felt foreign, every corner haunted by the presence of a lie I let grow. I had no answers, no way to fix what was broken. I didn't know how to rebuild the trust I'd lost with Eli. I just knew one thing. Marcus was out of our lives for good. But the damage he left behind would take much longer to erase. The days that followed were filled with silence. Eli barely looked at me, and when he did, there was nothing but disappointment in his eyes. I didn't blame him. I blamed myself more than anyone. I allowed something dangerous to grow under my roof. I allowed my emotions, unchecked and fragile, to blind me to manipulation. Marcus had played a game, but I gave him the board to play on. I reached out to Eli one evening, not expecting forgiveness, but hoping for clarity. I told him everything from my side, how it began, the subtle shift in dynamic, and how I had confused attention for affection. I owned every mistake, not to justify them, but because he deserved the truth. He listened, arms crossed, face unreadable. When I finished, he said nothing at first. Then, in a quiet voice, he asked, "Would you have ever told me if I hadn't found that journal?" I didn't have an answer. The truth was painful. Eli's trust in me wasn't just cracked, it was shattered. And that was the deepest wound of all. He told me he didn't hate me, but he didn't feel safe around me anymore. Those words landed like punches. I had lost more than my pride. I had lost my place in his life. His respect, once so solid, had withered into suspicion. Eventually, he decided to move out. His father, my brother-in-law, agreed to take him in. I packed his things quietly, holding back tears. He hugged me, stiff and brief. I whispered that I'd always be here if he ever needed me.
He didn't respond.
And just like that, the house was silent again, but not the kind of peaceful silence I once loved. It was hollow, suffocating, and filled with regret. I blocked Marcus, deleted every message, photo, and trace of him. I knew the damage couldn't be undone, but I could at least shut the door to that chapter. The aftermath wasn't just emotional, it was deeply internal. I had to face what made me so vulnerable to begin with. I started therapy, something I had avoided for years. I began to confront the loneliness I had ignored, the emotional gaps I tried to fill with attention from someone I should have seen as off-limits. It wasn't about Marcus anymore. It was about me, how I had let years of emotional neglect turn into desperation for connection. I had to rebuild, not just my relationship with Eli if he ever came back, but with myself. Relearn boundaries. Redefine self-worth. Understand that affection wrapped in manipulation isn't love, it's control. Months passed. Eli didn't reach out, and I didn't force anything. I sent him a birthday message, simple and free of guilt. He replied with a short thank you. It was small, but it was something. This story doesn't end with forgiveness or reunion. It ends with a lesson I'll carry forever. Never confuse attention for care, never ignore the warning signs masked as charm, and never underestimate how betrayal can disguise itself behind a smile.